Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lions Grid. I am Kevin Marhine, flying solo today as Jeffrey is traveling for the holiday season. And of course, it is almost time for Christmas. So if you are someone who is traveling to celebrate with family, certainly wishing you safe travels and a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there. And, hope that. Yeah, it is, you have a wonderful time celebrating with, family, friends, all that good stuff. So wanna thank you for, taking some time with me here on Sunday morning to talk this matchup between the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. And without further ado, we'll get started here, and we'll just start talking about it. I mean, these teams are two very different places here at this point in the season. Yes, the Lions, both teams are coming off losses. The Lions, of course, had their second loss of the season against the Buffalo Bills. The Bears lost to the Packers. But two different stories, right? The Lions were coming off an 11-game winning streak. The Bears are now on an 8-game losing streak. So it has been some tough sledding for the Bears, of course, after the Thanksgiving Day game where the Lions did beat the Bears earlier in the season. Matt Eberflus was let go as the head coach following that sort of disastrous end of that game there, the poor time management. But things have not gone well since Eberflus has been fired. The Bears defense has given up 34 points on the road to both the 49ers and the Vikings, and they have not been able to score more than 20 points in either of those games. In fact, last week against the Packers, they only scored 12. So the Bears are definitely in a weird spot right now. They definitely seems like the best part of their season is going to be the upcoming offseason. Whereas the Detroit Lions, of course, are in a three-way battle with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings here for the number one seed in the NFC heading into the playoffs. And with all of the injuries that we know that the Lions have, I know all three teams would love the route to the Super Bowl for the NFC to go through their hometowns. Uh, but for the Lions, with all the injuries, having home field advantage at Ford Field may be an even bigger thing because defense is one of those things that travels, and our defense is pretty banged up at this point in time. So um, I think we're going to be relying pretty heavily here on Jared Goff and the offense. The good news is the offense has looked good. Even last week in the loss to the Bills, Jared Goff had 5 touchdown passes, almost threw for 500 yards. Like if you had any of the Lions skill position players outside of David Montgomery who did get hurt in that game, they probably helped you to a fantasy football playoff victory because there was lots of fantasy points there to be had if you had any of those Lions skill position players. And the offense looked good, even though it was a loss. I think the Bills are definitely a caliber of team where playing good isn't enough to get you the win. You have to play almost perfect and to get the win, and that just didn't happen for the Lions last week. So they get the loss. I think they also had a couple of injuries pile up there as well. The good news is that with David Montgomery, it seems like maybe that isn't going to be a season-ending injury for him. He is definitely out this game, but he, potentially we could see him back. But if we do look at the players that are out and take a look at these injury reports, David Montgomery, again, out. Jalen Reeve-Maben, out. He was potentially being activated off IR, but he is out here. David Branch is questionable with a calf injury. Graham Glasgow is also questionable with a knee injury. And then Ifeatu Melanfonwu is questionable. He was activated off IR with his hand injury. So, those on top of all of the other season-ending injuries and all that good stuff that the Lions have, those are sort of the five guys. Again, Montgomery and Reeves may have been out, and then Branch and Glasgow and Melanfon were going to be questionable here for the 1 o'clock showdown with the Bears. Um, and yeah, it's yeah. If we take a look over at the Chicago side of things, I'll be honest, I'm not as super familiar with the Bears team, their roster outside of their skill positions. They have a lot of guys on the injury report here for the offensive line. They have Doug Kramer, an offensive lineman who's doubtful with a shoulder injury. They have Devon Jenkins, an offensive tackle with a calf, who's questionable, and then Braxton Jones, who is questionable with a concussion. So at least looking like they're beat up there along the offensive front for the Bears, and then they have Travis Homer, one of their running backs, is doubtful with a hamstring injury, and then a defensive lineman, Gervon Dexter, with a knee questionable, and then a cornerback, Jalen Johnson. Questionable with an illness, but again, those aren't their premier star players, so not a whole lot there from the Bears on their injury report. Certainly, much more noticeable names there. Influx for the Lions. So, um, yeah, it's I think if on paper, it's definitely a game where the Lions should be considered the favorites, despite all the injuries they have. Uh, Teams going two very different directions. The Lions looking to head into the playoffs and trying to get healthy while doing it. The Bears definitely a team who is heading for some shakeups. Obviously, they've already let go of Matt Eberflus as their head coach, so there'll be likely a new head coach, considering how the interim coach has been doing so far. Uh, them being 0-2 since they've made the switch. Unlikely that he'll probably be retained as the head coach moving forward, but who knows? It's the Bears. And then I think their GM, their general manager, may also be uh, coming under fire here too this offseason. So I think the Bears are headed for a bit of a retooling. So, you have a team struggling, no real plan for the future at the moment versus a team with the Lions who still have their sights very much set on that Super Bowl and getting to the playoffs. So it's not going to be necessarily easy. And we did see that in that earlier matchup against the Bears on Thanksgiving, the Lions were able to get out to a hot start against them. But in that second quarter, Caleb Williams was able to get some things going there and almost pull things back. And if it wasn't for that snafu with the timeout there at the end of the game, at the very least, could have potentially taken it to overtime or found a way to win the game there. But due to the poor management miscommunication between the offense and the coaching staff, they ultimately handed us a gift there on Thanksgiving to break the losing streak for the Lions on Thanksgiving. So, yeah, the Lions really do need to finish strong in order to maintain that number one seed in the NFC, and not only the number one seed in the NFC, but to win the NFC North crown for the first time back to back in team history. Uh, you know, it's really gearing up for a Week 18 showdown with the Vikings to determine exactly how that plays out. But before they get there, they have to win this Week 16 matchup against the Bears, and it's going to be a chilly day out there in Chicago for the game. So, one of the knocks against Jared Goff has always been that he plays much better in warmer weather. So we'll have to see how he does here. He, as said, he was pretty impressive last week against against the Bills. But again, that was at Ford Field inside, and so we'll have to see if this colder weather does impact him at all here. And of course, now they're going to be relying pretty heavily on Jameer Gibbs to be the featured back now that David Montgomery is out. So we have Sonic still, but we're not going to be able to have Sonic and Knuckles out there. But perhaps we find a Tails to come in and be the third back there to help carry things while Montgomery's out. But we'll have to see. And yeah, as my dad points out, it is rather chilly around here. But at least when they're here in Michigan, they're playing indoors. Uh, in Chicago, they're going to be out there in the elements. So weather could definitely be something that impacts the offense here. And despite everything that's going on with the Bears, their defense has looked pretty good at times. Last week, 2 weeks ago when they were playing the Vikings, they did a decent job of limiting the effectiveness of Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense, despite how potent they've been. So oh, look at Dad dropping the Sonic knowledge with the or Shadow there. Yeah, we could use a Shadow the Hedgehog. That could be having just keeping the Sonic universe going strong there. But yeah, it's uh it's pretty interesting. The Bears defense has allowed 12.4 points per game in the first half of games, which is 20th in the NFL. And 17.7 points in the first half over the last three games by contrast. So that's 32nd, so last place. So they give up a lot of points in the first half, which is kind of interesting because I feel like the Lions do a very good job in the first half, and then defenses kind of make some adjustments, and it gets a little more interesting there. But our defense also adjusts in the second half. But Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's as my dad points out here, I think despite Chicago having a decent defense, they spend a lot of time on the field. And when you are spending that much time on the field, it does make it difficult to keep up that level of play. Which is one thing that I think, we saw last week the Bills and the Lions sort of trading back and forth. And the defense for the Lions had to spend a lot of time on the field. I think if this game, if the Lions can flip the script, if they can sort of win the battle for time of possession and give their defense time to keep the Bears offense on the sideline and keep our defense from being out there too often. I think that's really the way that you can help a defense that is struggling with injuries and has holes. Carlton Davis, I feel like was one of the guys who had been stepping up with all of the injuries that we've had to the defensive front and that linebacking core and was really making a difference in the secondary. He has now joined the ranks of the fallen with his jaw injury. He's not done for the season, I don't think, but he is scheduled to miss, I think, like 6 to 8 weeks with that fractured jaw. So that means our new cornerback number one is Terrion Arnold. And of course, we drafted him with our first pick. He has looked good at times through the season, but he has struggled with pass interference calls as well throughout the season, doing a little bit too much hand fighting there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the secondary can step up, and up until really recently, the secondary has been sort of our the only part of the defense that hasn't been injured, and now we're starting to see Brian Branch is questionable for this game. We did lose Dorsey as well last week, Carlton Davis, so we've lost our other rookie Enos Rakestraw too. So I mean, it's getting harder and harder to hide all of the weaknesses here in the defense because just those injuries are mounting, and like we're having guys who are playing, you know, the same week they're joining the team from other teams' practice rosters and things like that. And it's not so much an excuse because I think they have done a good job getting those players ready. And I will say that one of the most impressive things has been is that no matter who the Lions have been putting out there, the way that the whole defense converges to the ball carrier has been impressive. It definitely fits with the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes sort of culture they built with the Lions. So you see them flying around, you see everybody getting to the ball regardless of how long they've been with the team. So that's been good. But yeah, there's only so much you can do when you're forced to be putting in, your sixth and seventh string guys and having them play meaningful downs for your defense. So I think the best way, uh, as my dad says here, it helps to have uh, hide the defense's weakness, and we got a lot of them at the moment. But I think if the offense can really step up and keep the Bears on the sideline, that's probably our best bet. And I think the way to do that is really going to be keeping a clean pocket here for Jared Goff when he is not pressured. I mean, he can be one of the. I mean, he showed last week. He was coming off one of the best performances of the season, and he was doing everything he could to try and keep them in that game with the Bills. But I think in order for him to be successful here against the Bears, it's going to be they're going to need to keep him standing upright and let him be able to step into his throws and all that good stuff. Um, Last week they had a pressure rate of 39.1%, which is their third highest of any game in the season. And then if you look back to the Thanksgiving matchup, they actually let the Bears have a 41.7, which was their highest pressure rate of the season. So they've been, it seems like here recently there's been a little bit more pressure on Jared Goff, and I think the Lions, if they can find a way to uh, keep him upright and have time to make the passes, he could definitely pick apart this Bears defense, who has been struggling and recently, and I think that's mostly due with the offensive struggles that the Bears are having because uh, they're just forced to be out there all the time. So you can kind of see, taking a look at the Bears, you can see what happens. Even if you have a good defense and you're forcing them to be out there all the time, it can be it's detrimental. So yeah, it's a tough one. And then, of course, I think if you take a look here at one of the big storylines is not necessarily for this game, but just in general when it comes to the Bears, is Caleb Williams. Of course, it seems like history is repeating itself here with another quarterback selected by the Bears very early in the draft. Of course, he was the number one pick here, and it's been kind of a wild ride this season so far with him. At times, he's definitely looked the part. He looks like he could be. Um, a successful NFL quarterback, and then other times it has just been ugly. And it was, I mean, we kind of saw that in our first matchup with them, where the first half, Williams struggled, and then he came through in that second half and made things very interesting with the final outcome of that game. So, you know, it's it's kind of up or down the last couple of weeks. It's definitely been rough. And I don't know if that's just a byproduct of them taking the offensive coordinator and moving him to the interim head coaching position so that they're not able to, his attention's being pulled in different ways and he's not able to spend as much time focused on Caleb Williams in the offense. But whatever's going on there, it definitely doesn't seem to be a recipe for success. And I think this is kind of the first time where you've had a QB. I shouldn't say the first time you've had it, but it's definitely not good when you take a QB with the number one pick in the draft and that quarterback is nowhere near the conversations for rookie of the year. I mean, you have Jaden Daniels, you have Bo Nix, you have Brock Meyer, you have, there's plenty of guys out there that you could talk about for the MVP award, or sorry, the Rookie of the Year award. And I don't think that Caleb Williams is part of that conversation based off of his play so far this season with the Bears. I don't necessarily think that means he's going to have an unsuccessful career, that he's necessarily going to turn into the next Mitch Trubisky, but or Justin Fields. But certainly, we've kind of seen this play out before with the Bears, and it definitely, if I was a Bears fan, would be concerned because it seems like history is repeating itself here for a third time when it comes to Caleb Williams and the Bears. Yeah. So we'll talk about it a little bit more when we lock in the pick. But today's game, of course, is at 1 p.m. It is on Fox is the main channel that you can see it. It is one of the several regional games that is in the early broadcast window. It's Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma on the call. And then if you want to listen to the game, you can also catch it on the Detroit Lions radio network with Dan Miller and Lomas Brown, or on Sirius XM channel 226. So again, at 1 p.m., you can catch uh, the Lions and the Bears as the Lions go for their sweep of the Bears in the regular season. And I think more importantly, in terms of for the Lions, keep pace in the NFC playoff race, as well as continue to hold on to the top spot in the NFC North to hopefully win their first back-to-back NFC North titles. That would be lovely to see. But at this point, it definitely seems like they're on a collision course there for Week 18 with the Vikings. As my dad points out there, the Bears ownership sucks. Certainly, they do seem to be like one of those teams, the Jets, the Colts. One of those organizations that no matter what they do, things seem to not end up well. So I'm definitely not gonna dispute that one at all. All right. Oh, and let's see here. What do we got? We got Justin Fields. Justin Fields could be good. Williams, if you get the right structure, he needs to be good as well. Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting things for this was that Caleb Williams was, I think, coming into one of the better rookie situations that we've seen in a while. They obviously had DJ Moore from their trade with the Panthers. They signed Keenan Allen. They drafted Roma Dunze. The big thing was that offensive line, which they didn't really make a whole lot of improvements to and has struggled. And I think it is kind of poetic that Caleb Williams, they also drafted a punter during the draft. And Caleb Williams infamously now told him that, hey, you better get used to being on the bench because we're not going to be punting a lot this year. And they've been punting a lot this year. So it's you should wait. Just another sign that you should wait to talk shit until afterwards, because yeah, they have not been able to back that up, and it stands there as a testament. All right. Moving, it's kind of a weird thing here with week 16 of the NFL because um, yesterday we had the Texans play against the Chiefs, and we had the Ravens play against the Steelers. And those four teams will actually be kicking off week 17 on Wednesday, on Christmas Day, but it'll be the Chiefs versus the Steelers and the Ravens versus the Texans. So week 16 ends on Monday night, which is the 20, what is that, the 23rd. Yep, so it ends on the 23rd, and then week 17 starts Wednesday, December 25th, Christmas Day. So it's a very short turnaround between week 16 and week 17. So if you are in your fantasy football playoffs, maybe they finish before week 17. If they are, if the final game is being played week 17, just keep that in mind. There's two Wednesday night games, a Thursday night game, three Saturday games in week 17, and then Sunday night games and a Monday night game, which is the Lions going to San Francisco. So, yeah, a lot of games going to be played here in the upcoming days, but just note that Week 16 ends with the Packers and Saints on Monday Night Football, and then Wednesday kicks off again with the Week 17 with the Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, Texans. So uh, if you're doing fantasy football, just keep an eye on that because certainly I don't remember it in the past being that way, and I know the Christmas Day games on Netflix are sort of a new thing this season, but it does. Uh, Adds an interesting spicy element there in terms of fantasy football playoffs and things like that. So just keep an eye on that. But then looking around the rest of the league in terms of the remaining Week 16 games here, I think one of the best ones on the slate is the Eagles and Commanders. That game is also in the 1 o'clock window. Of course, the Eagles 12-2 traveling to Washington to take on the Commanders, who are 9-5. Philly won the earlier matchup this year, but it's gonna be interesting to see how those two teams match up here with Washington having the home field advantage in this one. And then you also have it would be more interesting. I haven't heard officially yet if Geno Smith is out of this game or not, but you also have the Vikings traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how things play out there as well. And of course, those are the two teams the Lions are trying to keep pace with to hold on to the number one seed. Um, so we'll have to see. I don't know if the Seahawks can help us out or if the Commanders can, but those are two good games on. And then for my lock of the week, and again, I don't make the odds. Bet MGM makes the odds here. At least that's who I use when picking my lock of the week. And I'm looking here, and Sunday Night Football, we have a matchup between the 8-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the 6-8 Dallas Cowboys. And for whatever reason, the Cowboys are only favored, or are sorry, the Buccaneers are only favored by 4 points in this game. It is a home game for Dallas, so I guess if you figure usually home teams are 3.5 point favorites, the fact that they are 4 point underdogs, I guess that kind of swings it to 7.5. But I mean, it's Cooper Rush led Cowboys, and I know Jeffrey got burned last week with his lock of the week, with his hatred for the Cowboys and choosing Carolina in that game to get the win. And of course, the Cowboys came out and beat down the Panthers. But I don't see that happening here against Tampa Bay. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield. I chose Tampa Bay last week, so maybe it's a little bit of biased here, going 2 weeks in a row with Tampa Bay. But I mean, uh, the Bucks look hot, and the Cowboys. I mean, I don't believe they've been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs at this point in time, but I looking for Tampa Bay to give them a loss here to help make that more of a likelihood that they will not be in the postseason. So, yeah, -4. I'm going to take Tampa Bay as my lock of the week to get the victory over the Dallas Cowboys. And again, that's a Sunday Night Football's game there. But yeah, I think that should be a pretty easy game for Tampa Bay to win here against the Cowboys. All right. Well, that just leaves the pick for today's game. And of course, you know, as mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, I think this is a game, even though the Lions are dealing with all their injuries and the fact that it is outdoors, cold weather, may impact Jared Goff a little bit here. We may not see the same Jared Goff we saw last week, tearing things up against the Bills. I do expect the Lions to come in here and get the win. So I'm going to go with the Lions to complete the sweep over the Bears. Um, you know, obviously, uh, things could happen, but I mean, the Bears they're on an 8-game losing streak. Things haven't looked good for them, especially over the last couple of weeks. They haven't scored above 20 points in the last 4 games, or 21 points in the last 4 games. Um, I just think that this is yes, the Lions are coming off a deflating defeat against the Bills last week, and certainly we've gotten used to them winning. But at 12-2, them again playing for the number one seed in the NFC, playing for the division title. I think they handle business against a Chicago Bears team that is pretty lackluster at this point in the season. I expect them to extend that losing streak to 9 games in a row here. So, as Heather Carwayne says here, go Lions, and I think it should be a Lions victory. So hopefully on Tuesday, on Christmas Eve, I'll be able to come back on here for the Lions grid, and we'll be able to celebrate a Lions victory as they improve to 13-2 on the season. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this Sunday morning. Of course, we're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And let me check in here on YouTube to see what we're up to. So we have a goal of reaching 100 subscribers before the end of the season, and we're currently up to 71 subscribers. So definitely appreciate all the support there. If you do enjoy the show and want to help the channel grow, the best way to do that, if you haven't done so already, is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that is at the Lions Grid. And then if you want, you can, of course, ring the bell as well to get notified when we go live. And typically, our episodes are every Tuesday is our sort of post-game episode, and then every Sunday is our pre-game episode. It's the regular cadence. Of course, things do happen throughout the year, and it depends also on when the games are scheduled, but by and far, we're usually stick to that. And I guess this means my dad thinks the Bears are going to get the win here with the nope. It will be a loss. There is what he's predicting for the Lions, but that's helpful because I don't think he predicted them to lose to the Bills, at least not on the show. He didn't. And they lost that game. So every game that he's predicted a loss, it has helped propel the Lions to a victory. So we're hoping that stays consistent here, and we can celebrate a Lions victory over the Bears here in Week 16. But again, if you are in your fantasy football playoffs, just remember Week 17 and Week 16. There is a very short turnaround between these 2 weeks. This week, Week 16 ends with the Monday Night Football game with the Saints traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers. And then Week 17 starts on Wednesday, Christmas Day, as the Chiefs head to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And the Baltimore Ravens head to Houston to take on the Texans. So only one day in between Week 16 and Week 17. So if you do find yourself in your fantasy football championships in Week 17, best of luck to you, but make sure that you're checking your rosters because it is, again, short turnaround there between week 16 and Week 17. And, of course, the Lions are playing the Bears here in Week 16, and hopefully we'll get that win. And then we won't be playing again until Monday night on December 30th against the 49ers in San Francisco. So they get a decent amount of time in between games there, a chance to get healthier as they look to head over to San Francisco to take on the Niners. But first things first, have to handle business here against the Bears before we start worrying about the San Francisco game. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kevin Marhine. Again, want to wish everyone a very happy, wish everyone safe travels if you're traveling for the holidays. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas for everyone. I know Jeffrey is traveling himself, so I hope everyone gets a chance to spend some good time with family, friends, have some good food, exchange gifts, all the good stuff. And we will see you back here on Tuesday night, Christmas Eve, to hopefully, again, talk about a Lions victory. Until then, go Lions, and we'll catch you during the next one. Bye bye.